Judge, welcome back to the program. How much do you expect this to cost the county in property tax revenue?
Well, so we're doing this because the biggest cost of people, having kids and living their lives is childcare after rent. And so we've recognized that that's a massive burden and a massive expense for people getting into the workforce. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier by hopefully reducing those costs a little bit. So for the county itself, it will probably cost something like $250,000 annually in tax revenue. It's not, you know, but we think that it will help greatly in lowering a little bit the tax burden for businesses that own their places and also businesses that lease from property. We've put a provision in there to make sure that people who rent a childcare facility from an owner will still see some savings in their rent.
$250,000 seems like a rounding error for Travis County, but you have to make up this money somewhere, I presume. Where would that come out of the budget, or are we talking about a tax increase to make up that $250,000?
Yeah, so I think the thing to focus on is that it's going to help people who are struggling to pay for childcare for their kids. I've got two little kids myself. It's not too long ago that I remember those bills for childcare, especially in the early years, really mounting up. And so I think it's going to save people who are in most need a good amount of money. As far as what it will do to our budget, the actual exact amount will vary year to year, and the actual savings for each childcare center will vary. But our budget is about $1.4 billion, and this is a $258,554 expense that we think is well worth the investment.
I've been in a situation where childcare has taken up a big chunk of my budget for my two children. But I guess the question that a lot of parents might have is there a requirement that these childcare centers have to pass those savings along to the clients?
Yeah, that's certainly the hope and the desire. And again, it's $258,000 for all the providers in Travis County. So I don't want to get too far out ahead of thinking that this is going to be a massive savings for any one family. But the idea is that it will lower the burden on people who are operating those centers. We've seen through COVID a reduction in the number of childcare centers and frankly, just the supply of childcare centers in Travis County. So our hope is not only that this would lower the cost a little bit for people paying for childcare, but also would help childcare centers that are struggling even to stay open. Because if we're going to continue having a booming economy like we do here in Travis County, we're going to need to make sure that people can get childcare when they need it so that they can go work for Samsung, so that they can help us build the improvements to our airport, that they can work on Project Connect, work on I-35 improvements. We have a lot of demands for people for a lot of jobs here in Travis County, and we're only going to have more over the next 10 years. And so we need to do everything we can to make sure that people who want to participate in that economy and go to work for those jobs have a little bit of help in getting those childcare expenses.
When you guys gamed it out, is there any rough type of savings you think that each family might see in Travis County?
I have not done that math. Again, the big part of this goal is to make sure that we keep our childcare supply. And so our hope is that we're going to reduce the burden a little bit for some very small childcare providers, some that are a little bit larger. But the idea is we want to make sure that we're keeping and possibly growing our childcare provider inventory so that we can continue to fill all these jobs of these great companies that keep coming here to Travis County.
UT Austin just did a study on this and talking about how a quarter of child care centers across the state since the pandemic have closed. Child care workers don't get paid as much as they should, yet the cost for child care is so high. Clearly, it's an issue that a lot of constituents are seeing, but why tackle this right now with everything that's going on?
Yeah, again, there is a huge need for this, and the fact that Travis County faces the highest childcare costs in the entire state, that we need to use the tools that the state gave us last session by allowing us to do this. this type of property tax relief. I think it was under Proposition 2. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make this a great economy to help support working families. And this is a small step, but it is a step in that direction of supporting childcare centers.
How about raising the pay for childcare workers, some of the lowest paid out there?
Yeah, so we increased the wages for people at Travis County recently up to, I think it's now $20.80 an hour, something like that. It had been as low as, I think, $12 or $15 fairly recently. We also have increased the amount of time parents get for paid parental leave at Travis County. It was nothing, and then we passed it for 8 weeks, and then now up to 12 weeks. It's a very important part of keeping our economy going, making sure that we have enough workers. And if we're forcing people to pay a huge percentage of their paycheck for childcare, then they have to make that decision. Do they work, or do they stay home and not work because they can't afford childcare? And so we're trying to make that decision a little bit easier for folks so they can participate in the economy.
And Judge, just for clarification, when does this begin? Next year?
What's that?
When does this begin?
So let's see. That is a very good question that I don't know the answer to, if it takes effect immediately or if it's in next year's budget cycle. I'll need to get back to you on that. But we know that, like, we got a lot of money from the federal government recently to help the recovery from COVID, from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Right.
I think Texas got something like $4 billion in grants, and that allowed a lot of childcare providers to stay open throughout COVID. But as you said, we also lost a lot of providers. So that money is soon going away. So we need to think creatively, such as taking advantage of this state law to make it a little bit easier for childcare centers to survive. And we need to keep thinking of other ways to help that as well.
Well, that was my next question. Federal relief funding for child care centers does expire next year. How much more of a burden does that put on Travis County to make sure you maybe help supplement some of these places to keep them open, since a quarter of them have closed statewide?
Yeah, it's a real issue. And I think if we want to keep being competitive and attracting businesses to Travis County and filling the labor force, we need to keep thinking about how we're going to make it easier for people to get childcare. So this hopefully is one step that will help, and hopefully we'll be able to think of other ways to help as well.
Judge, some people might be watching this and say, listen, I don't have kids. This doesn't impact me. But the argument that UT Austin made in a recent study, and the argument I've heard from a lot of folks is, listen, this is a bigger deal for the economy itself. If people don't have a chance to send their kids somewhere at an affordable price, then they may not take part in the marketplace at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you like flying in a first class airport, if you like driving down I-35, if you like using, cell phones that use semiconductor chips, all of those things depend on a great, robust labor force here in Travis County. And if people can't work because they can't afford childcare and they have to make that tough decision, we're worse off as a county. And so we need to make sure that we're helping people get trained for those new jobs that are coming here. And part of that training, I think, is supplying childcare. We do a lot of that through Workforce Solutions, another entity that we help fund here that actually pays for childcare while people are getting job training. But I do think we need to look at ways to expand that, because with all of the needs for jobs to be filled here in Travis County, whether you have kids or not, it's important to have a robust workforce. And this, I think, will help a little bit in that direction.
Judge, some people might see this and say, listen, here's Travis County, pushing the envelope, maybe moving a little further to the left on there. But this is something that state lawmakers, the Republican state legislature, gave counties the ability to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I believe, Proposition 2, which allowed cities and counties to do just that, to provide an exemption on property taxes for childcare providers. And I don't see this as a partisan thing. Frankly, it's trying to help grow and support our workforce, support our working families. There are still things that Democrats and Republicans agree on. I think this is one of them. I don't see this as a really partisan issue, frankly.
How will you know whether this is a success or not?
By looking at the number of childcare providers. If they stabilize and actually start growing, then this is working. If people are able to find affordable childcare in Travis County, then this is working. And if not, then we need to look at possibly doing other things to help make that childcare more affordable and make life easier for the providers of that very, very important service for our children.
And just because Travis County is doing this, this doesn't necessarily mean that childcare is going to be more affordable in Travis County, though, right?
No, not necessarily. I do believe, though, if we do things to help keep childcare providers in existence and stop the trend of losing childcare providers, that will provide, of course, more opportunities, more competition, all the things that the free market allows when there are more businesses providing those things. So I think the childcare industry is in a very tough position now, and especially was during COVID. We saw that because of so many of them had to shut their doors. Yeah. My hope is that this will help keep them in existence and potentially lower costs by having more providers that don't have to pay quite as much in property tax.
And last question, any idea, if you zoom out and look at this, any idea how much this is going to, and I realize that every child care center is different in size, et cetera, and their property taxes are going to be different, but how much is this going to save the entity themselves? Are we talking about a few $1,000s a year or more than that?
Yeah, I don't know that it would be much more than that. I think, let's see, I can get you the stats. There was a number of providers that this will help. I don't have that here in front of me. I'm gonna need to get that to you, but yeah, it's not a, it's helpful. It's not, I don't think, solving all of the issues that childcare providers have.
Judge, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate the insight and watching what you're doing in Travis County. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Really appreciate the time.